So, a very warm welcome to all the esteemed panel today on the platforms of Iijsa, that is International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis. Myself, Varun Mansali, is the co-convener of Iijsa, and today we have, we will discuss on a very important topic, which is terror financing and money laundering to fuel the insurgency. Even after abrogation of Article 370, this is a very pertinent issue, which is very pertinent and very significant at this time also, that where is the financing coming for the terror which is going on in the valley. And for that, we have esteemed guests today with us. And I'm very pleased to say that the whole platform of Iijsa has been started by Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dheman, who is behind this whole platform and who is the convener of Iijsa. And the basic motive behind Iijsa is to have unbiased analysis on topics which needs to have unbiased opinion, and those opinions and those analysis should go to the government also, that these solutions can be there of such issues which is the need of the hour. So I request Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dheman to please take us forward, and please take over, sir. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Varun. Thank you for your introduction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the portals of Iijsa Jammu, which is a think tank in Jammu and Kashmir. And we are committed to giving unbiased opinions and do academic research into the actual happenings and not the way they are reported elsewhere in the country after being deformed and some kind of corruptions which is taking place inside those. So today, before we go on to it, I want to tell you something very interesting story. The moment I posted the links of this particular thing and with an introduction, there's a WhatsApp group with me, which contains people from POJK and Gilgit-Baltistan, and lots of diaspora, which is already settled in US, Canada, UK, and elsewhere in Europe, also part of it. Unfortunately, wonderful. I wouldn't say wonderful, but it's a bit of an acrimonious debate started, which was very interesting. I thought I would share with you before we go further. The first participant was from US, who probably is ex-Pakistani, and he gave a wonderful explanation. He says, Brigadier, what are you talking? J&K was never part of India. Never. I said, yeah, what are you talking? Are you aware of history? Are you aware of geography? Are you aware of even the current affairs for that matter? So that's the kind of a funny kind of an incident that came up. The second thing that happened was Mr. Virendra Sharma is expected very soon. He's a member of parliament in UK Parliament. So he happened to point out to the BBC, in which they showed a map which was without the J&K, Indian map without J&K. And he, of course, spoke to the authorities in the BBC Corporation. Yes, Mr. Virendra Sharma is just joining in, and there was a whole lot of signature campaign against him by the Pakistani guys, saying that Virendra Sharma is a Labour MP who ought not have to have supported India by saying that India's J&K is a part of this thing. And then they started a signature campaign, and I guess about 1,500 people have already signed on it. So that sort of provoked my mind a bit. Then I also have started a signature campaign, giving all the details about what all happened in front of what all has happening in front of the High Commission in London. The kind of unruly behavior, it happened on 15th of August. Even the ladies were not spared, the Kashmiri ladies. And one of the Kashmiri ladies told me, she says, "Abhi tak to hame Kashmir se nikala hai, ab kya hame London se bhi nikaloge?" So this is the kind of a thing. ISI is sponsoring some kind of a narrative, and they are organizing people with lots of funding, etc., that they should go ahead and sort of do anti-India, anti-J&K some kind of a hate campaign about everybody who belongs to India or who claims to be an Indian citizen. So such like incidents happen today itself. So I thought that before we begin with, I should mention and make a reference to these. So Mr. Virendra Sharma is already here. Sir, the petition has already reached Boris Johnson. So far, in last 2 or 3 hours, I think we've already had about 37 signatures already, sir. And we've planned to have 10,000 signatures in favor of this. So that is already there. So no, this is the doing of the ISI of Pakistan, wherein they're using narco money, that the kind of narcotics that is being grown under the tutelage of ISI patrons. And they are the ones who are selling it to the rest of the world. So as it is, they're creating a problem for the world by virtue of growing and perpetrating the use of narcotics all over the world. And it is a well-known fact that the root of this narcotics is starting from Pakistan, Afghanistan, grown in Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into India, Bangladesh, and to Southeast Asia, and to the rest of the world. And all the money that is being earned by these people, that is almost a parallel economy of Pakistan. Same GDP as the entire GDP of Pakistan. So that much money they have. So they can afford to give it to the diaspora in the countries like US, Canada, UK or elsewhere in the Europe, and spend a lot of money and get a manufacturing campaign and spreading hate against Indians. So that is what they're doing. And as I told you earlier also, that during I think December 2019, I was in a seminar in Manekshaw Hall in New Delhi, where I very strongly purported that yes, why don't we also start some kind of a laboratory, information lab, wherein we also sort of firstly counter their narrative by exposing them with videos. And secondly, if required, we can also manufacture a kind of a media campaign wherein people start getting our views. And then somebody said, well, we can do it, but India is a poor country. We are not using any narco money. We are using the legitimate money. So where do we get it from? I said, okay, though it was though I'm an army guy, I shouldn't be suggesting this particular metaphor, but it is a metaphor nevertheless. I said, buy one Rafale less. You'll have 1,700 crores of money available. So this is a metaphor. I'm not going to advocate this kind by any standards. But if we can always find money if we have the will to do it. So that is the particular thing. So same thing what is happening in J&K. The hapless people are dying. Unfortunately, the guys who are the perpetrators, nothing happens to them. They are in well safe locations, in the air-conditioned locations, having best of everything. The children are perfectly parked elsewhere in the world, doing very good education, and all their assets all being looked after by somebody or the other. Whereas the hapless Kashmiri, whether it's from Jammu or from Srinagar or from any other part of J&K, Ladakh, or even Gilgit-Baltistan or POJK, they are the ones who are suffering. They are the ones who have been devoid of any kind of a prosperity, any kind of a livelihood, any kind of human rights, any kind of liberties, any kind of independence. So with this, all happening because some Ziaul Haq started Operation Topak, that okay, I cannot defeat India in a conventional warfare, so let me take on the bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. And let's promote our jihad or Ghazwa Hind philosophy in a manner that starts from Kashmir, goes on to Jammu, goes on to Punjab, Haryana, and then finally Delhi. And so much so their sight, if you all remember, like in 71 war or even 65 war, we had enough number of PWs telling us, hey, look, when the op order was given out and the plan was given to the soldiers, which is the normal practice, they would also say, okay, subah ka nashta Jaisalmer mein hoga, dopaher ka lunch Jaipur mein hoga, और जुम्मे की नमाज जामा मस्जिद में पढ़ी जाएगी, लाल किले में पढ़ी जाएगी. So these kind of things have already been coming. So that is how they made the narratives. Now we have to expose this particular ISI nexus, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. Like we had enough number of incidents wherein, like, there was an inter-border trade which was stopped later for this reason. There was somebody from Jammu, a trader, who would send some fruits to let's say, POJK. Let's say like modus operandi at that time, ED told us that suppose he sent the fruits for 10 lakh rupees consignment, but he showed it as a 50 lakhs consignment. So 50 lakhs came into the account of this guy. So he was told, okay, you were supposed to give you 10 lakhs, you keep 20 and give 30 to so and so, so and so. And that money goes into the valley for funding the terrorists. So similarly, they had another incident. They told us that they're establishing a travel agency in Srinagar, which says that we will conduct the travel itineraries. So they would have groups coming. So each group would pay $10,000 each. They might get $1 million. And then the clause is, in case you cancel this tour, the money will be forfeited. So obviously, the tour had to be cancelled. So money remains with the handler in Kashmir, Srinagar. And then he is told, okay, keep so much with you. That is your money. That's your reward. And this is the money can be distributed to so and so, so and so, so and so. And then there was an organized industry of stone pelting by the students. Or if some militant dies, the funeral procession, the rudalis, the sympathizers, nare lagane wale, so they would have some kind of a boli lagegi. Like it's a tender process. If somebody says I'll do it in 10 lakhs, somebody the next chap says 9 lakhs, so 9 lakhs gets the contract. So he's supposed to organize, let's say, 500 stone pelters, 20 rudalis, 1,000 people who are in the procession. So such like cases are there and plenty. So I would think today it is not my day, but we have esteemed panelists, we have esteemed speakers like Mr. Kuldeep Khoda. You all know he is a ex-DGP and a very, very accomplished officer with lots and lots of achievements to his credit and has done a wonderful job. And he also is a son of the soil who knows J&K backwards. So welcome, sir. I would request you to take on. But before that, I would also welcome Mr. Colonel Singh. He is again a very accomplished and very, very decorated police officer who's served entire India, and he has a very, very in-depth knowledge and very good hand on insurgencies, how they spread, how are they funded, how are they sort of perpetrated. So today we have these two very esteemed officers who will tell experiences, who will tell us what exactly happens, and of course they will also tell us how do we get rid of it. And I welcome the rest of the panelists, Mr. Jandayal, Mr. Anand, Mr. Virendra Sharma, Mr. Christie, Kanika, Shubham, Rajan, so people who would be asking questions to our esteemed panelists. So whatever comes to your mind, whatever doubts that you have, whatever confusions that you get, you please try and clarify with them after their spoken. Do a question answer session. I think Kripesh Hiranandani has a question for you. Kripesh, can you please unmute yourself and come on?
So good evening to all, sir. Actually, my question is that we see that like in current scenario, the maximum terrorist organization are shifting their roots of terrorism from technical to tactical to technological. They are shifted, and we see there are various cyber security attacks are going on, and they are attacking in the various we see in last few decades that various cyber attacks and various these type of things are done in the technological manner by these terrorist organization. And we also see that use of dark web for illegal funding, or because they are leaking the confidential information on the dark web in a large manner. So, sir, how you see, according to the Indian perspective, is India needed cyber army also? Because many countries are also working on that, like US and Israel.
See, there are two aspects in the cyber world. One is a defense, one is an offense. We already have CERTIN, which is looking after the defense of critical infrastructure in India. The Ministry of Home Affairs has also started a unit in MHA, which deals with the development of cyber technology and handling the cyber attacks. As far as offense is concerned, I would not be able to comment on that, what Government of India is thinking thinking and what they are doing on that.
Thank you very much, sir. Ranjan Sharma, you also have a question. Please unmute yourself and ask him a question. Ranjan Sharma. Okay, sir, I'll repeat his question. Ranjan Sharma says, I am a resident of Doda, 32 years old, and in that way, terrorism in J&K with my age. Though through local discourse and various literatures, I consider terrorism in our region is not a failure of agencies, but they deliberately let it happen. I want to know whether it's true or not. So what do you say about this? He's talking about the Doda region, or let's say about the J&K only. He says it's because of the agencies let it happen and not that it actually happened. So what do you say about it, sir?
Brigadier Dheman, you are...
Yes, sir, yes, sir. It's a question
Oh, okay,
for you, sir.
sorry, I missed it. No, let me assure Mr. What was the name you raised?
Ranjan Sharma, sir, Ranjan Sharma.
Let me assure Mr. Sharma, it has never been and never will be any handiwork of agencies concerned. If at all any agency is involved in it, it is the ISI. As far as Indian agencies are concerned, he should have no doubt about it that we are all have been and are acting in the interest of nation for the integrity, for maintenance of the integrity and sovereignty of our country. And this is a deliberate campaign spread by Pakistan and their agents in J&K, who try to malign India on various fronts, including spreading this campaign whenever they kill any person on because of whom the Pak agencies can tarnish their image. They try to put that sort of incident on the agencies, which is absolutely false and which is absolutely untrue. And more than that, the vicious campaign about involvement of agencies has been always there, and it is strategy of most of the enemy agents who calibrate and control and spread terrorism in any area. And you should have no doubt that any sort of terrorism which is happening in J&K is basically originating from Pakistan. Financed, funded, armed terrorists are being sent. Training is also from there, and their agents who are paid by them, they are coordinating the effort in the form of overground workers. And the actions of the agencies have also always been the interest of the country. Don't fall prey to their sort of vicious campaign or any such of anything like any planned by them. They have been doing this on human rights front also. When they face some sort of, they get into a corner on any human rights thing, they try to attribute it again to intelligence agencies. This is a tool which they have been using, and know the truth of it. Unfortunately, some people tend to believe their version, which of course events have always proved that those things were not backed by any truth. And it is just a campaign which you should totally ignore. And also, if there is any doubt in anybody else's, you should try to clear it rather than try to have this thing in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, Mr. Colonel, can you please come on?
I may supplement Mr. Khoda on this.
Yes, sir.
Sir, we were doing investigation of those blasts in Delhi in 96, 97. So in one of the interception, I don't remember the name, but some Bhatt was there. And he was talking to somebody in Dubai, no, somebody in Saudi Arabia, about using the human rights activists against the Kashmir police. See, this campaign is deliberate campaign. And deliberate campaign about the police is not doing this, security agencies are not doing this. Either they are not doing or they are doing excesses. Like in Batla House, they said you have killed the innocent people in that. I have faced that, how these many politicians and many people have behaved in that. So we have to be watchful as a citizen of our country from this malicious campaign against the security agencies by the vested interest people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just try to supplement again.
Yes, sir. Mr. Harbans Singh, sir, please come on.
Sorry, Brigadier Dheman, I will try to another an interesting conversation intercept which we captured and recorded. And there are like that. There are numerous intercepts like that which have been there. Like one of the intercepts during the 2010 agitation, and it was at its prime, and almost every day there was some casualty in the response of security forces to the high intensity of pelting and arson. The conversation which one of those days we recorded, which was interesting, between two senior Hurriyat people whom we arrested subsequently. They were exchanging the reports of the day, and the junior reporter to the senior fellow mentioned that there was casualty today. He said, how this agitation will go on unless five or six people die every day. We cannot sustain the agitation. Please ensure that something is done about it. So this is, and then they always try to attribute it to forces. Of course, forces that act, but they initiate and they try to ensure that forces respond, which can create some sort of problem in the form of loss of life. Then it the agitation and the insurgency activities also.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harman Singh, please ask your question, sir.
Thank you, Brigadier Dheman. My question is to both the experts, Mr. Khoda as well as Mr. Colonel Singh. Mr. Colonel Singh, I entirely agree with you about what you said about the Batla encounter. But I also sympathize with the young man, Ranjan Sharma. He has pointed out something. There is a doubt in his mind. And I will also partly agree with him, not fully, partly agree with him. Most of the major incidents that have happened in India, no accountability has ever been fixed to the best of my knowledge. The recent being Pulwama, Air Force, within days it took action out of, because of the friendly fire which shot down a helicopter. But such a big incident happens and we do not know who failed us, who failed the country. We do not know about the Mumbai attacks. We do not know much about the failures about the intelligence agencies. So many agencies are working in J&K and elsewhere, and yet we do not know. We know another thing, that question is addressed to Mr. Colonel Singh. We are aware as common citizens that a lot of activity goes on in NIA and Enforcement Directorate. So many people get arrested. There are high profile cases which are pursued very vigorously in the media as well. But what is the success rate? How many people in high profile cases they have been prosecuted successfully? Thank you very much.
Let me attempt about the first question. Putting the accountability and what intelligence agencies are doing. See, we had one problem in our country, that one intelligence agency would not share with other intelligence agencies the fully things. And that was a problem. And therefore, after 26/11, one agency was formed in the Intelligence Bureau, which is known as Multi-Agency Center, and through which the coordination is being done now, the proper coordination. And there is an effort that, and with the coming of NIA in the 2009, because NIA now looks after the whole terrorist scenario in the country, and NIA then gets all the information and intelligence, and therefore the chances of failure are less now as compared to what was happening before 26/11. Second question you have rightly asked, and it is the mind of many people, that how many people Enforcement Directorate or NIA is sending to the court, and what is happening in that. Most of the cases which are under investigation and which you see, they are sent to the court. But there is a delay. And there is a huge delay because if I talk of the money laundering cases, most of the people are high profile people. They are able to hire the best of the advocates. They are able to get lot of orders from various courts, which delays it. I'll also come to, for example, Indian Mujahideen. It is the case of 2008. In all cases, charge sheets were filed in the court. We are in 2020. Only 2 cases have been convicted till now. One in the case of Jaipur and one in the case of Hyderabad. Remaining cases are still under trial. The reason being is the cases are there in Gujarat, Bangalore, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, in various courts. In each trial, the accused have to be brought, and accused are dispersed in various places. We need to have a system where one set of terrorist organization should be dealt in one court in the country, which has not taken place, because our law says that at these places, if the case has happened in Ahmedabad, the Ahmedabad court it will be tried. If the case has taken place in Jaipur, Jaipur court it will be tried. And there's a huge delay that is there. And this delay is imputed to that as if the investigating agency has not done the job. Though the investigating agencies have filed the cases in the court, but unfortunately the trial takes very, very long time. And unless the trial is complete, we do not feel that justice has been done. Thank you.
I would like to supplement it further with some facts and figures. Just suggest that the charge sheets which have been filed in many of the high-profile cases which I mentioned are available, and those charge sheets can be accessed to know about the investigation and fixing of the responsibility. Now, if you are mentioning about the fixing of responsibility as far as certain things like failure of intelligence, which is often raised by interested elements, mainly the political elements and opposition parties, let me tell you with a lot of authority, the intelligence gathering mechanism has been able to prevent much more number of incidents. If 9 incidents out of 10 potential incidents are controlled in advance and neutralized in advance by timely intelligence flow, it doesn't come to public notice, and it need not be brought to public notice, because that will leak our own efforts and mechanism of intelligence gathering. Now, one incident which happens, it can always happen. It cannot be a so foolproof a system that the security force or intelligence don't have a magic wand. Knows everybody's mind and every nook and corner what's happening where. It is practically not possible. Even in US, the 9/11 incidents happened. Just few days back, you must have read in media about a person who didn't want to fly out of Chicago, probably Chicago airport. He remained at airport for 3 months undetected. And I must tell you with a lot of authority that Indian intelligence agencies are much more effective and much more capable of gathering intelligence, and they have been delivering. And to mention that there has been some failure or they have failed is just trying to hitting under the belt. But at the same time, if it is fixing the responsibility as far as perpetrators are concerned, let me mention few things which some of which Colonel Singh has already mentioned. Like, in most of the terrorist incidents, the terrorists have a very short span of life. The average span is 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, that sort of thing. Somebody dies within days of joining terrorism, somebody dies within a year or 2 of joining terrorism. So in most of the cases, the persons who are perpetrators of a particular crime get killed during the investigation of the terrorist crime which they have committed. Subsequently, they get killed in armed actions. And in those cases, there is no accused person against whom charge sheet is to be filed. But again, he has named few high-profile cases like Pulwama. The case has been charge sheet. The persons who are still alive, many of them are dead, but those who are still alive, they have been arrested. And the intelligence and the evidence has been collected. It is in court. Similarly, Parliament case, it resulted in death penalty of the survivor of the person who was involved in that crime. Others got killed on spot, and some more got convicted. And same thing happened about the Mumbai terror attack. The case has been charged. People have been named. Lakhvi, who is one of the main brain behind about it, now has been arrested by Pakistan. That is mainly because of the FATF, as Colonel Singh has already mentioned. But it's not that action doesn't get initiated, but as rightly pointed out by Colonel Singh again, that in most of these cases, the finances to defend the accused also come in plenty, from like the funding of terrorists. And they have no shortage of funds to defend themselves in the courts. And then our judicial system also, the criminal justice system, requires a lot of changes and a lot of reforms. It's a lopsided criminal justice system where most of the accused, quite a lot of evidence, get acquitted just because of some technical issue, which is unclear. I think we need to have our law modified or reformed to the extent that wherever there is sufficient evidence, there should be enough to convict a person. And then the other point which has been brought out is about human rights cases. The let me tell, the Mitchell fake encounter case, it has resulted in sentencing of the personal security force personnel here who were involved in that to imprisonments. There's another one in another district which was investigated by CBI that has also resulted in conviction. Then there is a Ganderbal fake encounter case in which for last more than 10 years, one of the SSPs who was District SP Ganderbal and few of his officers, they are still in jail facing the trial. It's not that there is anything to be covered up or put under the carpet, but at the same time, we have to understand the basic fact that in most of the terrorist crimes, the witnesses are either not available, or if they are available, they are not willing to come forward to depose, mainly from the fear out of that is one of the main issues which the investigators face in these cases. So I think we have to go deeper into it before trying to reach a conclusion about the inefficacy. Yes, it's not that there is always scope for improvement, and a lot of improvement needs to be done. I initially mentioned that we have to do a lot of work in eliminating terrorism in Pakistan, but at the same time we have to recognize the sacrifices of the forces who have been over 5,000 of our security forces have laid down their lives, which includes army, the paramilitary forces, and the J&K police, and the lots of nationalists who have got killed in the process in trying to espouse the cause of sovereignty and integrity of our own country. Thank you.
Very rightly said, sir. There are plenty of problems, and everybody is working tirelessly to ensure that the terrorism is eliminated. But however, because of the technical issues, our justice system, our procedures, which really need an overhaul in view of the newest techniques that terrorists are adopting, terrorists are evolving by the day, we need to sort of come up in a big way, sir. So thank you very much, sir. Well, the house is open now. Anybody else who wants to ask a question, please? Yes, Mr. Samyal, we lost you for some...
I lost the correction, so I'll watch what the answer was later on. But something not related to today's topic, Mr. Khoda. Last time when you were on the webinar, you mentioned about DIG Watali. Is he the same Watali who was accused by Mr. Abdul Ghani that he disrupted the counting and influenced the voting? Is he the same person?
Which voting, Mr. Samyal, you are referring to?
1987, the elections of 1987.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I have not gone into it. There have been some complaints about 1987 elections, and I'm not privy to what exactly has happened. There are allegations that there was some problems in counting. Yes, there was there, but I don't know who all were responsible for that.
So, Mr. Harbans is quoting last seminar. You quoted that Mr. Wadali, DIG Wadali, He was killed outside the home of his father-in-law, sir. This is exactly what Mr. Savyal is quoting.
No, not he. He wasn't killed. No, not he wasn't killed. Another terrorist.
Yes, sir.
Another terrorist. A terrorist was killed outside the house of his brother, who had sheltered. The accusation was that he had sheltered terrorists there. But of course, that doesn't make Mr. Vatali the culprit.
I think Mr. Savyal is referring to Mr. Zahur Vatali. Zahur Vatali was involved in Hawala, and he's under arrest. He has been arrested by NIA and still under arrest in Delhi. And he is involved in Hawala. There are cases against him. But let me at the same time mention that when Kashmir was facing one of the severest problems in terms of law and order prior to 1990, because Mr. Vatali retired early in early 90s, and during that period, he was one of the rear officers who has worked tirelessly in protecting the integrity of the country, in busting the Al-Fatah gang, who was decimated the Al-Fatah gang. He was one of the main officers who was responsible for that. And he has lots of credentials to support his nationalism and his tireless work in the interest of maintenance of the integrity of the country, particularly J&K.
I'm talking about Deputy Inspector General of Police at that time, A.M. Vatali.
Yes, same person I'm talking about.
Same person. Because Mr. Lone, he gave an interview to one of the historians, modern historians from Sweden, Widmam. And he accused him that that was the beginning of terrorism, tracing the roots of terrorism. One of the reasons for trouble in 1990, he traced back to 1987, the election of 1987, and the role of Mr. Vatali particular.
You know, there are people, I agree with you, Mr. Savyal, but let me tell you, people have their own conclusions depending upon the level to which they have been exposed in trying to trace the history of terrorism. But let me tell you, I was SSP Poonch from 1984 to 1986 for 2.5 years. We busted lots of gangs. The arms flow was there. We captured arms ammunition. And the first gang of the JKL terrorists who went across for arms training was in 1985. There is evidence for that. And that was 2 years before 1987. To place the blame entirely on 1987 elections as if 1987 elections were the root cause for terrorism, that is much beyond the truth. And they might have aggravated the feelings of some people, but they might have acted as a trigger maybe. But Operation Topak was not the result of 1987 elections. It was conceived much before 1987 by General Jawal Haq. And that operation was put into place. Necessary ingredients were made available in the form of funding, arms, training, everything by Pakistan ISI and Pakistan Army. And if 1987 elections would not have happened, probably maybe the terrorism would have started a few months late or a year late, but it was on. It is not because as if 1987 elections were responsible, or if 1987 elections had not happened that way as it is being alleged, the terrorism would not have been there. It would have still come. And we are totally unprepared at that point of time to meet the terrorism. And let me again tell you, the first consignment of AK rifles was captured in district Kupwara by the then SSP Kupwara, Mr. Amin Shah, in 1987, before elections. And the persons who had brought those weapons from across the border, they also confessed to training and getting equipped from across. So linking it totally with elections is unfair, I think.
Yes, sir. Savyal, sir.
I think my questions are over because there is a little bit of difference. I look at it from a political angle. It's a political problem, basically, where terrorism played a major part. And our esteemed experts, they take it as a law and order and this kind of problem. So there is a gap between my point of view and what they are trying to make me understand.
It has political inclination.
ISI of Pakistan, a book by Heen G. Kesseling. In it, he says that by 1988, as Mr. Khoda has already said that, by 1988, there were 40 organizations already working in the state, which were either religious, political or militant organizations militant in thought at that point of time. And I would like to trace that back to the year 1979, when Mecca was taken over by the Islamists. And as a help from the mullahs, the Saudi Arabian royal family had to concede that they will be pumping in petrodollars all over the world for expanding the Wahhabi, uh, Salafi kind of Islam everywhere. India was one of the targets at that point of time also. So by mid 80s, I agree that these organizations had already taken root not only in J&K but many other places in the country as well, cities. Not on a large scale in the cities, but they were there. The seeds were already there. So that petrodollars, that played a major role for us because of other reasons. We tend to put our focus only on Pakistan, and we forget the transnational jihad that was there and is still going on in one form or another. It is mutating every day, every year, with different tools, with different approaches. So I understand that. I also understand, Mr. Khoda, that by 1990 there were 30 political organizations, Islamic political organizations in the state. So they couldn't have happened in 3 years between 87 and 90. They must be in the making earlier also. But primarily, if you look at the fact that in 2002 elections, 45% of the people voted, they participated in the democratic process of ousting Farooq Abdullah. That means that a large section of the people, they believed in democratic norms. So what we needed to have was very strong democratic institutions. And as those democratic institutions, they get weakened, the democracy is the first casualty. And the rest is all attendant to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy General Vijay Sharma has finally joined us. He had his prior engagement somewhere else. Thank you very much, General sir. Most welcome to the portals of Iijsa, sir. We leave this platform for you to ask questions to the panelists, sir. Though I am aware that you have not heard them, but you can always direct question or two from the J&K point of view, because you are the son of the soil and you actually worked in that scenario from the army side also, and you realize what the problems being faced by the civilian side also. Since both the sides of the coin, we have experts like Mr. Khoda and Mr. Colonel Singh. Kindly go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. No, I have been able to partially listen to the conversation, very, very insightful conversation that you had. I might have missed some pieces of information in between, but I have three issues, and this is not basically to find faults with anybody, but correctly diagnose the magnitude of the problem and then take corrective actions. And my first question is that we all knew, those who were watching terrorism, that for a long time, the lifeline of terrorism was terror funding. Then why did it took so long for the government of India to crack down on this basic issue? Question one. Question two, this stone pelting was there, and we knew that there is a terror financing which is behind it. So my question is to Mr. Khoda, what was the modus operandi which these perpetrators of the stone pelting was using to finance this the stone pelting at the grassroots level? And my third question is that, well, if you know the ebb and flow of militancy or violence in Kashmir, well, there are chances of future of agitational terrorism or major mass uprising which may have a political backing, and everything will depend on funding. So are there any preemptive steps that we can take to ensure that no such large scale ugly situations develop?
Uh, I will leave the first question to Mr. Colonel Singh, and second and third probably I can briefly mention my viewpoint on those. The stone pelting modus operandi, as the intensity of stone pelting was severe in 2010, and we made the arrests there. We raided lots of places. We were able to capture some main persons behind the stone pelting and put them under PSA that time, and subsequently the cases which are also, they are still under arrest and they are facing the trial. But as usually happens, we had to depend on the documentary evidence, and we captured documents also which revealed the modus operandi. The money would come through Hawala channels, which has been extensively dealt with in my earlier presentation and later by Mr. Colonel Singh also. And the money would get deposited in the, mostly in the, we found only J&K Bank was being used the money was getting paid by checks also. We seized lots of checkbooks, we seized the account books. And what used to happen is that the persons who would be tasked with it and who had been paid for it, say a group of 10 people, 10 boys, they would go to a particular area, selecting the location, like some busy chowk where the movement of people would be more and which would attract the attention of the crowds and media people also, and resort to stone pelting, and the stones would get transported sometimes during night and laid in the lanes and bylanes at the pre-selected places, and those stones, the pelting would start from there, and once other people would join the pelting because of the sentiment which was prevailing that time, and the sentiment is more or less still there in the same way. It's not that I'll come to that part later on as far as agitational terrorism is concerned. And once the stone pelting would pick up, these 10 boys would move to another adjoining area and start the same process again, with the result that a group of 10 to 15 boys would be responsible for a particular located area to ensure that the pelting starts and picks up and then move to other areas. Likewise, there were lots of groups formed in different towns. Mainly the modus operandi was to restrict to places where there were some crowds and which will disrupt the process and which will result in confrontation with the security forces also, which were deployed for controlling the law and order. As far as agitational terrorism is, this is a very big question and very right question which has been asked. The agitational terrorism, the potential still lies there. You know, in 2019, when this 370 and 35A article were scrapped, there was huge potential for agitational terrorism, but the preemptive arrests which were made, they largely helped. They helped to a great extent in the arrests of high-profile people, including the ex-chief ministers, the ex-union ministers, ex-state ministers, most of them. Now, when we had a locally elected government, it was never possible to go for the high-profile arrests for obvious political reasons and for obvious the government. Any action by the local have the consent of the political establishment also. You cannot suddenly go and start arresting people at high levels who would normally not be supporters of terrorism or agitational this thing, but who would definitely flare up the sentiment through their press conferences, through attack on security forces, by raising the human rights issues, by raising the issues which like confining the people to their homes and not allowing the movement, just fueling the sentiment. Now, that was also a problem that time because of the political establishment. That is true of all political establishments. You have seen in Maharashtra recently, and in West Bengal also you are seeing presently how the police functions in politically controlled states. And the Supreme Court had come out with 7 recommendations for reforming the police. Unfortunately, none of these recommendations have been implemented in letter and spirit by any state. And in fact, some states under the garb of implementing the recommendations of Supreme Court have in turn ensured more effective political control on the police. Now, it is high time that the reforms as intended by Supreme Court are implemented, and there's some vigorous movement takes place to de-link police functioning from the political establishment and putting it under a non-political entity, and a state security commission has been envisaged in that. It is not that police will be independent, but it will be accountable to a non-political entity in which the government will have also a role, in the sense that the chairperson would be the chief minister or the home minister of that commission. But it will be largely composed of people of high eminence who have some past experience in law and order and in judicial system also, and eminent public persons, so that the police is accountable to public through the commission. Now, that is one part of it. But other parts of agitational terrorism, which continue to haunt us, is the governance, the ease of living, the unemployment, the jobs, the development. Most of the funds which were sent for development would get frittered away, and very less of it would get utilized for actual development on ground. We have huge potential in J&K for development of horticulture, for tourism, for the hydropower and growth of hydropower energy, which can provide huge number of jobs, and software also for that matter, IT. But we have yet to exploit that. The infrastructure development lacks there. The communication problems are there. Unless the connectivity is built, the facilities are provided, the tourism cannot develop. So we had to work a lot to address the grievances of people, to address the alienation. And once the people are addressed in the sense that which makes people feel, yes, that we are the people who are being looked after to the extent as is required for the development of the state, for generating employment. And I'm sure that if the youth of the place are able to find useful employment in private sector, I'm not saying that government sector should open up, because government many, and if a person is employed in government and he's without work, he is also a problem. An idle man's brain is a devil's workshop, and you have found lots of government servants also involved in separatist activities in the past. So it has to be a sort of employment where people feel committed to their job, rather than getting strayed and getting radicalized by brainwashing, by social media, and by overground workers and the apparatus which Pakistan is placed in place in J&K. So the corruption problem is there. The people's problems, which they are still not getting addressed in form. If somebody has a small job, a building permission, it takes long time for him to get that. Now, the land transfer jobs, getting some certificates from the clerks in the office, the delays which happen, those irritants are to be eliminated. And obviously, these are the sources of agitation, and that gets channeled. That agitational state of mind gets channelized into disruption in the form of creating law and order problems also, especially among the youth. So we have to address this problem on a multilateral front, rather than taking it as a purely law and order problem. And to that extent I agree with Mr. Somyal that a lot needs to be done on many other fronts than merely on dealing with terrorists on ground and addressing the law and order issues. Thank you. And the first part, I think Mr. Colonel Singh is the proper person to address that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Colonel Singh can take on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Now, this is very, very important question asked about why took time in taking action. See, the problem is we have issues like terrorism came mostly, if you see, when the Punjab terrorism came. to begin with. What were the tools available, and what should the tools available for police to handle them? We had the Indian Penal Code, Section 121A IPC, waging war against the state. We had another, the Criminal Law Amendment Ordinance 1944, which says proceeds of crime can be attached. We have 102 CRPC, which says that suspected to be stolen property can be attached. No provision for the funds which may be coming for purposes, unless they are used by terrorists, you will not be able to attach that. Now, the first law came after Mrs. Gandhi was killed in 1984. The immediately 1985 TADA came. That how to deal with terrorists. Terror financing issue was still not there. Then there were allegations against that TADA has been misused in various states. Instead of taking action, the people who were misusing it, the TADA was allowed to lapse in 1995, 10 years. Then happened the Parliament attack. And immediately we brought the Prevention of Terrorist Act, that is Khoda. Allowed to repeal in 2004 again. Then we have no law to deal with terrorism except the IPC. After Bombay attack, then the prevention of unlawful activities was amended to deal with the terrorism and to deal with the terror financing also. So the question is, the legislators have to understand if there is a problem, what is the magnitude of the problem, how to handle it. Even today in our law, there is no provision of undercover operation. Suppose I want by men to infiltrate in certain terrorist organization to get intelligence and to act something, and some other agency catches him. Now it is up to that agency to believe me or not to believe me. But there is no legal provision available for that. So the problem, I agree, is the problem of lack of national consensus on terrorism. We should understand this is a problem, and for handling this problem, we have to deal like this. Unless that comes in the psyche, it will be difficult. The police is acting without the adequate legal assistance in that. I mentioned about the court process. See, we are not still able to get all the cases to be at one places, whether they have taken place in anywhere of the country. So we need to find out, and we have to recommend to the government again and again that to handle terrorism, these laws are required, these amendments are required, and that is the reason the terror financing, attaching the terror financing concept came much later in the Indian legislature or in the Indian laws. Thank you, sir.
Vijay, can I ask Vijay,
Yes, sir,
can I ask a follow-up question?
Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this question is actually both to Mr. Khoda, particularly to Mr. Khoda. I have watched whenever I went on leave, although I was in army for a very long time, people on the roadside with their caps and some bags, raising these funds for construction of madrasas and mosques all over the countryside. When I was commanding my battalion in counter-terrorism operations in Poonch and Rajouri in 1995, about that time, we had seen the series of these mosques and madrasas actually come in a very, very tactical manner all over the place. We also we knew all along that a lot of tabligis and these preachers from UP, Bihar, they are coming and they are operating in these mosques and they are radicalizing the youth there. It is not overnight phenomena. And we also knew, particularly in South Kashmir, some of the political leadership, actually, they were drawing their entire sustenance from such like radical organization. My question is not about that somebody is to be faulted for this and not. This is a political issue. My question is, what are our intelligence agencies doing on ground? I'm sure they may be making these comprehensive assessments about these writings on the wall. But then why the people who have to take action on these, they keep lingering on, they keep dilly-dallying till the situation or the water has overblown and it becomes a national problem.
So please unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with General Sharma about the observations he has made, and they are the right observations, and they were quite visible observations also. Besides funding being raised from door to door or from the roadside, a lot of money was flowing from Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia, into raising lots of mosques. And then the imams and other persons in the form of getting work at mosques would come from Bihar and UP also, and radicalize the young boys there. And this has taken the role of madrasas has always been a crucial role. The role of imams, particularly those coming from outside the state, with a view to radicalize the youth, that has also been there. And the tabligis, as rightly pointed out, though we found tabligis initially did not have much role, and of late have grown into a formidable group of preachers who would again travel from various places. And but we had to see all this in the background of the laws in force. The Rambir Penal Code, now we have Indian Penal Code in J&K, that time we had Rambir Penal Code, which is not quite different, and various other special laws to deal with. And raising of money, imams coming, radicalizing, this was getting reported by intelligence agencies. But to have an action taken in the form of arrests, there was always difference of opinion as to what extent one can go, whether those people can be arrested who, in the name of spreading Islam and propagating the teachings of Islam, but in the process radicalizing the mind also by going on teachings, by interpreting the Quran in a manner which can radicalize the minds. You know, it's a very delicate question, and especially, as I mentioned, in a political government, which is where the politicians, where the elected people have to have the votes of people always in mind, and they will be always driven by that that requirement that they have to ultimately go to the people back and to get the votes. To what extent they would go in and approve of any such actions which can result in people getting antagonized in the process and alleging government interference in the religious affairs. That has been always a sensitive question, and these probably, yes, in case of non-democratic setup, the actions are can be taken much easily. But I feel still that in any democracy, outside J&K also, it's not particularly J&K, but outside J&K also, it is very difficult to go against the general policies of the government and general directions of the government. No matter what the law book says, law can be stretched a bit more in a particular direction to ensure effective action, but that is not the only requirement. While police handles the local law and order issues where local sentiments are involved, particularly religious sentiments are involved. But the assessment which has been made by General Sharma, that has been my assessment also, that has been the assessment of all right-thinking people, that has created a lot of problem in the process, and the problem has accumulated, and the action was only taken when it became a real problem. Thank you.
Vidya, can I ask a follow-up question,
Yes,
please?
sir. Please go ahead, sir. All yours.
Yeah. You know, I have also been involved in combating militancy in Punjab. In fact, my battalion did some wonderful operations there, and I commanded a Sikh battalion there. Why didn't Jammu and Kashmir, particularly J&K police, which has done a wonderful job, let me tell you, I know the difficulties that they face, but could some of the models of KP Singh Gill would have been emulated by J&K police?
Let me frankly admit here that KP Singh was backed by a person like Ben Singh. What was his name exactly? Ben Singh, the Chief Minister?
Ben Singh.
Ben Singh, okay, yes. So that will be my straight answer for that.
Okay.
Let me try the previous intervention. I agree the foreign funds have been coming in large quantity for the mosques and madrasas. The whole area between India and Nepal, if we see the borders, a number of mosques have come. There have been intelligence reports about it, what is happening there and how they are grooming, how they are mushrooming. The question is it an offense to make a mosque? That was a problem. And now it is the first time that the government of India has amended the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, precisely for this reason, that the foreign funding should not be misused. And therefore they say all funds have to come to one bank in Delhi, and then only they will go to different places. The one organization will not be able to give these funds to another organization. So some sort of control is now being brought by the government. Second question was about the Tablighi Jamaat. Now question is whether Tablighi Jamaat is an organization which can be considered working against the country. That is either Prevention of Unlawful Activities Act, it is declared as the one organization. About the radicalization, we still don't have any legislation to deal with radicalization or de-radicalization. It is still lacking. Some police officers do it on their own, but like in foreign countries, they have the whole process of de-radicalization. And that is still missing, and we might take some more time to come to that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Jalshama, next question, sir.
No, I have my views, but I leave it to some other day.
Then today, sir, you will be the winding up everything before.
No.
Nina
No,
to come up with a question.
No. All I want to say, whenever I look at sort of say the panel today, I mean, these are such wonderful discussions on Jammu and Kashmir. People who have been born, brought up in that environment, who dealt with that environment. Unfortunately, and the kind of observations about our legal and our constitutional and about, the interface between the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, all these, everybody right-minded people think. Yet, we've not even today, we've not been able to bring it to the public discourse, because most of the discussions which are dominated on these subjects are actually by the people who have very superficial knowledge, very mundane and pedestrian knowledge about these issues. And we've not been able to get hold of people like you've been able to brought to this discussion to actually look at these issues in a threadbare manner and give some policy recommendations to the government. Whether those are heeded or not heeded is a different matter.
Thank you very much, sir. That exactly is the purpose of my platform. And in fact, I fought to tooth and nail in Delhi that such kind of a thing should be done. When it did not happen, with the help of luminaries like you, I could create something over here. And I've got so many people in Jammu who are backing me up, the retired IAS officers, IPS, intelligentsia, cat missions, and I'm gathering the support by and by. But nevertheless, I think Nina, which has a question, before we wind up, we'll request Nina, please ask your question.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. And yeah, I'm so thankful to the forum and to the experts. I've had such a enlightened session. So many fill in the blanks for me, because I'm talking as a common person, as a person who's always thinking and trying to fill in the gaps of what is happening in politics and happening in the law and order situation. So my question could be answered by anybody. The question is is on behalf of the common person like me. But when I, for example, visit the rest of India, I find there's a lot of poverty there. There is no development there either. There is enough corruption everywhere. There's a middleman, or the junior official or the senior official taking the money which should go to the common masses. It's happening all over India. It's not just happening in Kashmir. But why is it always made into a J&K and specifically a Kashmir problem? Corruption is pan India. Money not going to the common man is a pan India. Radicalization anywhere is pan India. Yes, Kashmir is a special case, all right. But why are always the people treated as if they are a special case? Why are they not told that these are problems which are being faced everywhere? My last visit to Srinagar, I came out feeling so disenfranchised, so disenchanted with Kashmir and the Kashmiri people. They only and only understand money. They've been fed so much money. And I'm not even talking about whatever ISI and all. With due respect, I mean, it was very enlightening. I understood the channels of money. But the government of India, through the army and through the other agencies, is giving money to NGOs, giving money to a lot of people, which they think will reach the common man. But I'm sorry to say, I was part of one such outfit. It doesn't go to the common man. People just vanish with the money. And then the taxi driver, the tourist, it's not just a touristy thing. All they want is free, government money. If you give them development also, sir, I mean, I would just like you to think about it. Just, you know, uh, what flushing Kashmir with money is not the solution. Just flushing it with development is not the solution. And radicalization or de-radicalization, or re-radicalization of the majority population or other religions is also not the solution. People want to live peacefully, but money, yes, because this thing was about money, I was very interested to know. And what I have realized, and my submission is that money, it has been the evil, the root of this, but it has been done from both the sides, not just Pakistan, ISI, and the mafia and all those. Money has been also been put in by the government agencies, by the Indian government, by the central government into JNK, and it has been misused at every front. There is no accountability. But what about the poor common people? They have nowhere to go. They, whenever they need money for something, whichever agency gives them money, they just go for it. There's a poor mother to be operated upon, perhaps a sister to be married off, or whatever. I mean, there are not many women getting married in Srinagar either. So could I get some kind of a reassurance that something could be done, to dewean the people away from this, easy money? Yes, sir.
Well, ma'am, thank you very much. You asked a very pertinent question. This is exactly what is there in my mind as well. And whatever number of times I've served in Valley, though I'm from Jammu, the same thing is in my mind, ma'am. And thank you very much for asking. If I may direct the question, not the panelists, if I may ask Mr. Khoda to answer this, because amongst all of us over here, he has spent the maximum time in Jammu, in touch with the people. So I hope, sir, Mr. Khoda would agree that my assessment is correct and I'm not sort of overstepping my rights anyway, sir. Is it, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with most of the observations made. And unfortunately, the policies of dealing with Kashmir have been changing from time to time. There have been different think tanks advocating different ways and means of addressing the problem, which has erupted there. Not only from 1947, I must say, much earlier to that, in 1931, also the first incident of communal violence took place in Kashmir. And the appeasement has been one of the policies being followed for substantial amount for many years. And fortunately now this policy has undergone a big change. And I think the government of India is now more focused on dealing with the real issues on ground, rather than trying to address the problem by sending the money and trying to appease the people by accepting the demands irrespective of their merit from time to time. And I said initially that the deterioration in appeasement had gone to an extent that the killer of the Indian Air Force personnel, Yasin Malik, was invited for roundtable conference, and where he shook hands with the then Prime Minister in the conference. And right now he's in the jail. Somehow it was felt by some think tanks, and government agreed to that suggestion that Yasin Malik can help in solving the Kashmir problem. Those vacillations have always been there, and still there is no specific Kashmir policy which can deal with the internal and external dimensions of the crime, of the problem. We need to have a very firm policy to deal with the external dimension and the internal dimensions, which will include not only counterinsurgency, it has to deal with development, funding of development projects, corruption, and all those issues. And and the first part of the question which Madam raised was about why Kashmir is a special case. In Kashmir, the content of people has been channelized by interested elements into anti-national sentiment, whereas people in other parts of the country don't try to get channelized into anti-national sentiment because of their obvious thinking and state of mind, and because of the way religion has been tried to be exploited by some Islamic State Union people, like people wanting caliphate and various religious radicalized elements who have been influencing the minds of people. And the discontent in Kashmir has always most of the time found way into anti-national demonstrations, picking off the guns, whereas that sort of anger or discontent in any other part of state has not resulted into armed struggle, though of course Naxalism has been there, but that's a different problem altogether from the way discontent has got channelized in Kashmir. So we have to deal with Kashmir in a different manner. But obviously, I agree that this solution doesn't lie in flow of funds which will get misutilized, but flow of funds which will get rightly utilized. Governance issues are there, corruption issues are there, the infrastructure problems are there, and of course the job creation problems are there. So we have to address Kashmir issue on a multilateral front, and for that we need to have a very clear-cut policy on Kashmir, which can be followed generally and which can get amended from time to time. But we have to have a roadmap where the appeasement, trying to appease people by paying them some money through NGOs and others, that has to be stopped for all times to come. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you aptly summed it up. Nina ma'am, any counter questions?
So just one little thing, that I felt, because I've done a lot of reading, not as much as the others, of course, but a lot of reading on Kashmir, this issue. I do feel at the very inception, 47, because it did not exceed to, I will say Jawaharlal Nehru. I would not even say to India, because Maharaja Hari Singh did not exceed to Nehru. Somewhere Jammu and Kashmir has always been given a kind of a, wrong kind of a treatment. The interpretation of how Jammu and Kashmir should be dealt with has been a little wrong. And there, even now the central government, because whatever precedents they follow, whatever advice they follow, comes from the presidents, I feel that. And there, of course, it was felt that Kashmir had to be wooed. It had to be courted. It had to be won to the Indian side. This was the Indian government. Whereas the other states also, the other ones which exceeded, they were never wooed or anything like that. So this, wooing has carried on even till now. And as it happens in all our Hindi movies, till the guy decides to go away, the woman will never say yes. So somewhere, the Kashmiris are carried on this wooing game too far. What do you say, sir?
Sir, Khoda sir, with your permission, can I request Mr. Savyal to answer this? Because he's an expert in history.
Thank you, Brigadier Dheman. I would like to put in a few observations. First, about the finances. Mr. A.S. Dulat is accused of bringing the suitcase policy into Kashmir. Mr. Khoda, correct me if I am wrong, but he unashamedly says that if that works, then why not? And therefore, it has become a norm now. I agree with you, Ms. Nina Vij, that this should not be going on for long. And I do believe that Kashmiri youth is not just sold to money. They come here, they go to the rest of the country, they work very well, they make a career out of their lives, and very good careers also, and they contribute a lot. So I don't buy that. We have to create that kind of situation. Another, Mr. Khoda, I would like to point out that the first big secessionist movement in India was in Madras state, today's Tamil Nadu. In 1965, that was the year when the constitutional provision for having English as a common link, that period was to lapse. And the government of India, in its enthusiasm for Hindi, they declared that Hindi would be the national language. And the whole of today's Tamil Nadu, that burnt. And that was a very dangerous situation. Dangerous because there was already a cultural link between the Tamils of Tamil Nadu and the Tamils of Sri Lanka. That would have created a dangerous nexus. But it was reversed by the wise decision to keep that thing pending. And then finally, once the elections ousted Congress out of the power in 1967, after that, there is only regional party ruling that state, either DMK or Anna DMK. That is, the regional aspirations are being taken care of, which unfortunately in 1966, J&K bid a goodbye to that when National Conference merged into the Indian National Congress. So that sentiment, that safety valve which was there for the regional sentiments, that was taken away from the state. And from that point onwards, there has been a constant struggle between the regional sentiment and the nationalist sentiment. And both the sides, they take extreme views and extreme measures, like Dr. Farooq Abdullah going to the extent of saying that he will take help from China. That is an outburst, I believe. It shouldn't be taken very seriously. But his other actions also, they were just because to spite the center, to remain in the saddle, he had to take certain positions. So he did that. And we, in our nationalistic zeal, we wanted to bulldoze and have a uniform society, which in a complex country like India is extremely difficult.
Yeah, impossible, sir, impossible.
That's not possible. That's just not possible. And what more can I say? That should suffice. We have
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Answered the question, and I can see Nina ma'am is quite happy with your answer.
Yes, yes, sir.
Anybody, any other question, please? Okay, if there are no questions, we have General Govardhan Singh Jamal with us. He's joined late. And ladies and gentlemen, I've known him for the last 2 years, and he's almost my mentor as far as the history of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. So I'm making a video series on that based on the inputs given by him. And he's helped me a lot, like a father figure, rather I would say grandfather figure. And yet who's very active, very agile, very crisp in his thinking. And may I request General Jamal, sir, can you please speak a couple of words before we call it a day, sir?
Well, I'm so happy really, as Jan Sharma said, that things are happening and now you have taken charge. I am very happy to watch, listen, looking back on my 73 years spent all over. Things are coming out. And I hope if we continue like this, probably it will also influence the future generations because present generation also doesn't know much about what has happened. They're absolutely ignorant, because I know in Jammu, whenever they hear you or somebody else, they ask me many, many questions. Today, in fact, I was late. We were working on in Jammu problem of that. Look at this. The IIT has created a problem for us now, and look at this. The parliamentary delegation goes to Kashmir, and Jammu, which is ignored about the tourism, they don't come here. Create problem. Who creates? The central government creates problems. Whatever now Nina said, this is the, I have watched this as a military secretary from the with the president. Things were going wrong from the central government. Central government had no grip on the state, and which led to corruption, appeasement, and radicalization. It was happening right in front of us. There was no control. I think the bureaucracy is equally to be blamed. Management is equal to be blamed. Administration, they didn't rule the state properly. I have seen the rule earlier also and later. Now let us hope that things will work out. And these kind of your interactions are very, very good. And now I hope people will start writing about it also. And this vessel like Nina, Vijay and others, they should educate the people about these things. Even now, people do not know what has happened and what happened and how it happened. I'm glad Arvanshi is writing now some books. We will try to get them introduced in the curriculum. I was with the Vice Chancellor just now, because things have not gone to the people, and certainly in Jammu, so they are too different. I wonder, even I was present in Srinagar, how overnight on 19th, whole of Kashmir flared up and the whole population was thrown out. Nobody spoke. What was even army? What was the army doing there? Nobody stopped anybody. So I'm glad that things are coming out. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. We are delighted to listen to your viewpoints, and thank you so much, and really grateful to you, sir. And well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had a very long discussion, and I thank you for all your perseverance to be here for such a long time. And you all contributed in a great manner to the discussion, and we've got a wonderful things out. And let me tell you, I've already filled 4 pages, and I'll be writing a report very soon and give it to you in time. So let me thank Mr. Kuldeep Khoda. Sir, thank you very much. Your insight was very helpful. Every lot of understandings for a lot of us. I also thank Mr. Colonel Singh. Sir, pearls of wisdom that you gave about rest of the country were really, really very helpful, thankful. And panelists like Mr. Harbin Singh Sanyal done a wonderful job, sir. Jal B.K. Sharma, despite his busy schedule somewhere else, he still found time to come on board on our platform. Thank you very much, Jal sir. And thank you, Nina ma'am, Christy, Kripesh, Ranjan. Since you all joined us for the first time, kindly, I've given you my number in the chat box. Kindly get in touch with me so that I can send you links for the next webinars. And of course, Kanika, my daughter from Zurich, she today has not asked question. I kept sending her a message. She says my questions are asked by the other panelists, so I need not come on board. Anyway, thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot, and see you soon in the next webinar. And I hope you will be as supportive and as helpful to me as you are today. Thank you very much, sir. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.